Shavua Tov, everybody, from a freezing cold Israel. Welcome to another week of the Israel Brief with me, Rolene Marks, and where we take a look at those top stories making in headlines that you are probably never going to see in your media in the countries where you live. As always, the Israel Brief is brought to you in partnership with these guys, Lay of the Land. And we love to spend time with you every Monday to Thursday, our Israel briefers from all around the world. Now, let me tell you something, it is absolutely freezing. And before people point and laugh and say, Israel, how cold can it be? Well, we have snow falling in parts of the country, including Jerusalem, a little bit in Beit Shemesh, in Gush Etzion, and other parts of the country, bringing with it a very cold spell. Now it is day 507 since the 7th of October, and at the moment we have 63 hostages that remain captive in the Gaza Strip. And as we hear every week more and more about the horrors that they face in captivity, the more urgent it has become that we want them out immediately. So let's take a look at our top stories, and we begin with the story that we ended last week, and that was the horrific news that our beloved Shiri Bibas and her two beautiful flamehead boys, Ariel and Kfir, along with the 83-year-old peacemaker Oded Lifshitz, were murdered in captivity by Hamas. Now, when we last spoke on Thursday, we had assumed that we had received the remains of all four, and they were being transported to Abu Kabir, to the National Forensic Institute for forensic testing. Now, in a last absolutely horrendous stunt by Hamas, the remains of Oded and the two beautiful little boys were confirmed, but the remains of the woman in the casket that was labeled for Shiri was an unidentified Palestinian woman. Now, there's two parts to this. First of all, the atrocious stunt, horrific stunt, torturous stunt played by Hamas against the family and the community and, of course, the state of Israel. And also that they care so little for their own people that they randomly picked any corpse to return it to Israel. Israel demanded Shiri's remains be returned immediately, and late on Friday night, the remains of Shiri Bibas were returned to Israel with an honor guard by the IDF. Now let me tell you about the spirit of Israelis. It didn't matter that it was freezing cold in the early hours of the morning. Thousands of Israelis lined the route as the police convoy came in from the south of the country through to Abu Kabir in Tel Aviv with flags, singing Hatikva, Israel's national anthem, accompanying Shiri on her journey to Abu Kabir. Now on Friday, the IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari released the very painful news that the forensic testing had found that the two little boys, Ariel and Kfir, as well as Shiri, were not killed by an airstrike. To quote Rear Admiral Hagari, they were killed with the bare hands of the Hamas-affiliated terror organization that held them captive. It is believed that they were killed very soon after being taken captive within the first week of November. Let that sink in. You have to be inhuman. You have to be a special kind of evil to murder with your bare hands a defenseless mother and her two small children, one of them not even 10 months old. Now, this is contrary to Hamas's claims that they were killed by an Israeli airstrike. And for anyone doubting, because it seems to be that Israel is the only country whose forensic evidence has to be second-guessed, these forensic findings have gone to Israel's allies around the country for independent verification. And according to a forensic pathologist who put quite a lengthy thread on X, he said it is very, very clear to distinguish between wounds sustained from an airstrike of sorts to being killed with your bare hands. Rear Admiral Hagari said that Yarden Bibas, Shiri's husband and the father of those two gorgeous little boys, looked him in the eyes and said, make sure the world knows how my children were murdered. This was before we had confirmation that the remains that came in were Shiri's remains. Now Shiri and the two little boys will be laid to rest on Wednesday, and the family have closed that off just to family and friends. There will be no politicians and nobody from the media or public. However, they have encouraged the people of Israel to line the funeral route as the bodies leave the Chevra Kadisha in Rishon LeZion and make their way down to the south. Now, I believe they've done this, first of all, because the family would like to mourn in their own way. It's a profound trauma, as you can well expect, but I think this would have been the biggest funeral in the history of Israel. In a very, very moving and dignified press release yesterday, the family wanted to thank all of Israel and everyone around the world who has cried with them, who has given them love, and who continues to embrace them. And we will continue to hold Yarden, we will continue to hold Danielle Siton Silberman in our hearts and in our love. Daniela is the sister of Shiri, and for anyone who didn't know, their parents were murdered on the 7th of October, Yossi and Margalit Silberman. Shiri was murdered, and her two little boys. That's 3 generations of one family. Now, Israel's Business Forum have given workers permission to come late into work on Wednesday so that people can go and pay tribute to Shiri, Ariel and Kfir by lining the funeral cortege route. Meanwhile, Oded Lifshitz will be laid to rest on Kibbutz Nir Oz tomorrow. Israel has notified hostage mediators that we are prepared to release 620 Palestinian prisoners today in exchange for 4 of our deceased hostages without ceremony. Now, Israel has held back on the release of Palestinian prisoners, they say, for the horrible and humiliating ceremonies that take place when Israeli hostages are released. On Saturday, Hamas released 6 hostages, Omer Wenkot, Omer Shem Tov, Tal Shoham and Elia Cohen, who were taken captive on the 7th of October, as well as Hisham al-Sayed and Avera Mengistu, who had been captive for over 10 years. What is absolutely grotesque, and we know this because Hamas filmed themselves doing this and broadcast it to the world. They took 2 hostages, Guy Dalal Gilboa and Eviata Al-Kayam, let them watch as the other hostages were released, took them out. They were sitting in a car very close to their stage, made them watch, and then took them back into captivity. That is a level of deprivation and of evil you can't even make up in your wildest nightmares. It is an absolute disgrace, and wait till you hear my answer for the audience question that's coming up a little later. Now, we of course are starting to hear the stories from the hostages, more allegations of being held in the dark in tunnels by themselves, being forced to dress as Muslim women as they were moved around, being spat on, being tortured, being burnt, being starved of food. And in the case of Avera and Hisham, who have been held for over 10 years, Avera's brother said that his brother is not talking yet, he's not ready to talk. Both Hisham and Avera both suffer from mental illnesses. but it's the father of Hisham al-Sayed, a Muslim Bedouin, whose testimony really cuts to the core. He said that, you know, what he got back was not human. Hisham is not communicative. He may be recognized as people, but he's not talking. And then he looks like somebody who was tortured psychologically for over 10 years. He says, as a Muslim, he says, I am furious with Hamas. They have no regard for human life. He says, and I call on the Arab Muslim world to condemn the actions of Hamas. He says, who use these hostages for political gains. He says, but they are inhuman. He said that doctors are even searching for a new definition of what Hisham has. He has been completely broken in captivity. Now, Hisham was handed over privately to the Red Cross. Hamas said it was to, in respect for the fact that he's a Muslim. But as Hisham's father said, it wasn't out of respect. It was to hide from the world, especially the Muslim world, what they did to his Muslim son. In other news, yesterday, Hassan Nasrallah, the former leader of Hezbollah, and his successor, at least for a very, very short while, Safieddine, were given a funeral in Beirut. Now, while you could hear the crowds chanting death to Israel and death to America, Israeli Air Force fighter jets buzzed the stadium where the funeral was being conducted, flying very low overhead in a very, very strong message to Hezbollah. You may think you're comfortable right now, but we own the airspace and don't even think of trying anything against us. We are stronger and we will not hesitate to take you out. It was a real show of power from the Israeli Air Force. And finally, on Thursday night, about 3 buses exploded simultaneously at about 9 p.m. in what is believed to have been an attempted mass casualty terror attack by Hamas. Now, the Hamas terrorists who put the IEDs on these buses with charges set the charges to 9 p.m. when the buses were actually back in the parking lots where they belong, rather than in the peak hour traffic on Friday morning, which would have caused untold atrocities. At least 2 have been arrested for transporting the would-be bombers from wherever they came from to the places where the buses were. Now, thanks to the good eye of a young woman called Adi Jigana, who spotted a suspicious-looking object and went to alert a bus driver, who then alerted the authorities, hundreds of lives were saved. Now, in which other country do you know a president who will personally phone somebody like Adi up to say, Kol hakavod, well done on saving lives? None other than our own president, President Herzog, who shared footage of the very, very moving conversation that the two had a short while ago. So those are your top stories coming in from over the weekend. Let's take a look at the audience question, and it comes from Maury in Melbourne, who says, Rolene, are you aware that there are still people out there supporting Hamas despite the horrific murders of the Bibas family? Maury, I'm well aware, and I'm going to say something, and I think it's time for people to pay attention, because I know that there are many viewers of the Israel Brief who are extremely anti-Israel. They take that position. And I want to say something. And I've said this quite a lot in the last couple of days in various media. I believe humanity is at a tipping point. What we saw on Thursday was theatre of the grotesque, was terror pornography trotted out for all the world to see. Hamas have told you again and again and again who they are. If you continue to support them, You are not supporting freedom fighters. You're not supporting the oppressed. You're not supporting the colonized, the brown versus the white, or whatever woke jargon you seek to wrap this up in. We are now at a tipping point as humanity. You are either on the side of the people of light, or you're on the side of the forces of evil. If you are still supporting Hamas, and I see the many of you walking in the streets of Glasgow, the woman who was carrying a bloodied baby, or waving flags of the Palestinian flags draped in your kafir while jiggling a little fluffy elephant toy to taunt us, because we know that a little stuffed elephant toy was Kfir Bibas's favorite little toy. Or if you're conducting mock funerals on the streets of London, if you are saying that Israel are lying, that we killed our own captives and passed it off as Hamas, open your eyes. Open your eyes. We all saw, every single one of us, with our own eyes, the depravity and the evil that is Hamas. And if you still support that, you are with the forces of evil. Now, this may lose me viewers, but as I've just said, in answer to you, Maury, I've seen it, I'm disgusted, and it is now time for people to decide. Choose a side. You are either with the people of light who revere life and the law and who are fighting for our shared values, or you are on the side of the morally depraved and evil. Choose a side. The time has come. So that's it from me for a very impassioned edition of the Israel Brief. Maybe it's the cold weather, guys, but honestly, I stand by what I say. And just remember, if you have a question, to please pop it in the comments section below or be in touch with us via our website. In the meantime, please don't forget to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online, our Facebook pages at Lottle's site, our YouTube channels right here at the Israel Brief. We're on LinkedIn at Rolene Marks, Instagram at Rolene_Marks, and on X at layoftheland5. Guys, God bless you all, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.